Hi there, this is AniBusiness with your friend Simeon. You are welcome to the second part of the online course that is for the catfish. Now I'll continue from where I stopped. The other video I stopped at feeding and feeding aspect, so I will continue from there, which means I'll continue from number 5. That very video I stop at number 4, and this very video I'm starting from number 5. So what we have on the number 5 list is difference between floating feed and local feed, and what percentage of feed should you give to your fish till you crop your catfish. Number 1, you have to know the difference between floating feed and local feed. When we say local, does it mean that the feed is not quality enough or the feed is not good? You don't need to worry. It's a very simple thing. For those who have been into this business, they know the difference between the two. For you that is just going into this business new, I want to tell you the difference between the two. Floating feed are often called imported feed because they are packaged feed. And some of these feed were shipped in from abroad. So that is why most of us call it imported feed. And the reason why some people call it floating is because it floats on top of the water. Why the one of local feed? We make it, we pelletize it. That doesn't make it local. That doesn't rate it low. It doesn't rate it low. The fact is just that we make it and we do not package it like that of the floating feed. And the reason why people still call it sinking feed is because it sinks into the water when you drop it for your fish to consume. So floating feed floats on top of the water, while sinking feed, which is the local, sink into the water. That doesn't mean that your fish are not going to eat it. They are going to eat it and they are going to do well when you have a very good formula for your local feed. 2. What are the examples of floating feed you can see in the market? You are going to see feed such as Alaqua, you are going to see Skirting, you are going to see Blue Crown, you are going to see EcoFloat, you are going to see Vita feed, and you will see Aqualis, you will see Coupens, and a lot more that is in the market. All of them are good at their own level, and the level of their goodness depend on their price. You are going to get that when you reach the store if you ask. But if I should tell you the best out of it, you are going to get the one of Scretin, Alaqua, Coupens. Those three are good. But oftentimes, the one of Coupens, I don't advise people to use it. Why? It's because fake of it is much outside. So if you want to buy Coupens, you should be very, very careful so that you don't buy the wrong one. 3. Why is it necessary to use local feed? And why do people decided to choose local feed over imported at some level? And can't I use floating feed throughout? Yes, you can use. And the reason why some people decided to change to local feed, I will tell you under this study too. Now, you can use floating throughout if you have the money. The reason why people use local feed is because they want to reduce the cost of feed. If you are to use floating feed throughout, the cost will be much more than the one of local feed. Local feed, you are just going to buy the ingredient and you go to the feed mill and they will help you to grind and repelletize it to some sizes. We have 4 mm, we have 6 mm, we have 8 mm, but the one of 8 mm is not much. And we also have 2 mm. The diet for the 2 mm, most of the feed mill don't use it that much. So that is the reason why some people decided to use local. The cost, they want to reduce the cost of buying floating feed. And that doesn't mean sinking feed is not working well. Like I said earlier, if you get a very good formula, your sinking feed are going to do well on your fish. But if you have the money and you don't have the opportunity to do the one of local feed, which is the sinking feed, you can buy the floating feed throughout and it's going to do well for you. 4. Between local feed and floating feed, which one grow fish the most? Both of them grow fish at their own level, but to be frank with you, floating feed grow fish more than the one of local feed, if I'm going to be honest with you. But local feed gives weight to fish more than the one of floating feed. The local feed and the floating feed are just the same if you get the hang of those feed, if you know how to calculate feed formula very well. When you started buying from like all this 1 mm, 2 mm floating feed, when you get to something like 6 mm, you will see that the content that are inside the one of 2 mm is higher than the content that are inside the one of 4 mm. And the content of energy giving food that is inside the 6 mm of floating feed is higher than the one of 2 mm floating feed, no matter the product you get. If you check the one of 2 mm or the one of 1.82, you will notice that the content of the protein that is inside the 1.82 mm going to something like 3 mm is higher than the content of the protein that is inside the 6 mm floating. That means they are gradually starting from something like starter, just like chicken feed, starter, then they will go to grower, from grower, then they go to finisher in floating feed. The same thing applies to the one of local feed. So local feed also starts from the one of starter, grower, and finisher. When you are starting your local feed, you will notice that your protein will be higher than the one of finisher. It's a must for you to increase the protein that is inside your starter, your local starter, just to increase the growth, to boost the growth of your catfish. And when you arrive at grower, you will reduce the level of protein that is inside your feed and increase the level of your energy given food a bit. So when you go to the one of finisher, then that should tell you that you will need much energy giving food like carbohydrate and so many things that will increase the weight of your fish. So that is the reason why I said local feed gives energy, gives weight than the one of floating feed. 5. If you want to use local feed at some level, so at what month should your fish reach before you change to local feed? Now it is very simple. When you stock your fish and you want to change to the one of local feed, make sure you stock your fish reaching more than 1 month, maybe 1 month, 2 weeks, or going to 2 months. Especially when you have hybrid, you allow them to eat floating feed up to 2 months, complete 2 months before you change to the one of local feed. But when you're having clarers, if you can apply the same process, then give them floating feed for something like 1 month, 2 weeks before you change to the one of local. So at that very time, how many bags of floating feed should your fish eat before you change to local feed? Now my calculation is going to be on 1,000 pieces of catfish. If you're having more than 1,000, you can now know how to do the simple arithmetic. Either you multiply or you divide if you have less. At least use 7 bags of floating feed before you change to the one of local feed. But if you're having hybrid, you should use up to 10 bags before you change to the one of local feed. Out of that 7 bags, how are you going to buy it? Because you are going to buy 2 mm, you are going to buy 3 mm, you are going to buy 4 mm. So how should you divide it? 7 bags. I will advise when you get your fish at juvenile level, buy 1.8 mm, at least 1 bag of 1.8 mm. Then you buy 2 bags of 2 mm, 2 bags of 3 mm, and 2 bags of 4 mm. These are the number of floating feed you need before you change to the one of local feed. Number 6, how many bags or how many kg of feed do your fish need before you crop them? Like how many bags of feed till table size, maybe 4 months or 5 months? How many bags of feed or how many kg of feed would you need to complete that very time between the first month that you collect your fish to the very last month that you are going to harvest your fish? If you are going to use local fish throughout, you are going to use 78 bags. 78 bags. So out of that 78, you should know how to divide it. Maybe you buy like 2 bags of 1.8, then you buy up to 5 or 10 bags of 2 mm, then you buy something like 10 bags of 3 mm, then you cannot divide the rest for 4 mm and 6 mm. And remember to complete your feeding with more 6 mm because it's going to give them energy, like give them more weight. If you are going to change from floating to sinking, like how many bags do you need? If you are going to change from floating to sinking feed, everything altogether will be up to 1,300 kilogram of feed. Out of it, you have your floating and you complete with your local. Your floating, out of that 1,300 kilogram, 300 kg of feed, you will have 7 bags of imported, 7 bags of floating that you are going to give them from the beginning. Once they pass 1 month, you can now give the local feed to them. So I hope you are getting the point now. If you are going to use floating throughout, you are going to give them 78 bags of floating. That is 1,200 plus of kg. And if you are going to change from floating to sinking, that means you are going to give them up to 1,300 kg. Out of that 1,300 kg, you have 7 bags of floating that you are going to give them from the beginning before you change to the one of local. Number 7, when you want to change the feed from imported, the floating to sinking, like what size should you go into directly when pelletizing the local feed? Your fish after 1 month can take 4 mm directly without any problem. So whenever time you are going to the feed mill and you want to pelletize for your fish, first remember to give them 4 mm. You go and do 4 mm. There is nothing like 3 mm and there is nothing like 5 mm. So is that you get 4 mm, 6 mm and 8 mm, and the one of 8 mm is rare. So if after 1 month, if you want to change, you are going to do size 4 mm from the feed mill. And note this, whenever time you want to give them this 4 mm, if they are eating floating feed and you want to give them 4 mm for the first time, your fish are not going to eat it very well. Don't panic. There is no problem at all. The thing is, your fish are not used to the floating feed. At first, they will find it very difficult to concentrate because the feed they are eating before is at the top of the water. Now the feed they are struggling to eat is going to the bottom of the water. So that is the reason why they are not going to eat much. And remember, the size is different and the taste will be different. So for that reason, your fish are not going to consume that thing fast. Like they are not going to eat much of it. So you don't need to panic. Now we are moving to the number 6 part of this online course, which is the study of water and the crucial part they take in the life of your catfish when you stock them. So we are going to study the water, what you should know about the water, and the crucial things, the important things they do in the life of your catfish when you have them inside your pond. Number 1, if you want to start your catfish farming, for instance, if people have been doing the catfish business along the area or maybe close to the place you want to do your own, then you don't need this number 1. That means the water is okay for your fish farming. But if people are not rearing fish there and you want to go into this catfish as the beginner, as the first person there, you need to test the pH of your water. And the pH of your water shouldn't be lower than 7. If you are getting between 7 and 8, it's okay for your catfish farming. If you are getting something below that, then that means the water source is not good for your catfish farming. Number 2, it doesn't matter what the color of your water is. We can have, it may be a kind of water that is a yellowish in color or a kind of orange in color. We do have this kind of water from any water source. If the water is not chemically polluted from any source, from the source, so you don't have problem with the color of the water. Your water must be light and not hard. If your water is hard, then the water will not be okay for your catfish. Like when the water is thick, it won't be healthy enough for your catfish. 3, your water must be clean always and not dirty. That is why I do advise most farmers to recycle their water time to time. There's a way you can do it automatically and there's a way you can do it manually. If you are using earthen pond, then you are going to block your water. You do the inlet and the outlet. Water will enter into your pond and it will go out of your pond. And if yours is concrete tank, then you do the same thing. You run in water from your overhead tank down to your pond and you recycle the water through the outlet. So that is just a simple way. You don't allow your water to be dirty and you don't allow it to be polluted. If your water is dirty, your fish, if your water is dirty and thick at the same time, then your fish are not going to be healthy because they are not going to see much oxygen inside the water for them to live well. And you know, oxygen is all they need to live, to breathe inside the water. So if your water is thick and at the same time dirty, then your fish are not going to get much oxygen. Number four, either you are using earthen pond or you are using concrete pond or the one of tarpaulin or you are using rubber basin. Your water must be conducive for your catfish. If your water is not conducive, then your catfish are not going to be healthy. From there, you are going to be losing your catfish, like you'll be having mortality upon mortality. In what way is water not conducive for catfish? Take a good look at this. I do tell you that, I don't know, maybe in the first part, I said something I cannot forget, that your water level must be more than 3 feet, at least not less than 3 feet, so that the water will be cold. And when you have your catfish inside your concrete tank, make sure you refresh the water or you do a shed on top of your concrete tank so that the water will be cold for your catfish. You know, when the wall of your pond, your concrete tank, when it emits heat from the sun, that it will pass it from there to your water. So from there, your water will be a little bit hot. So it won't be conducive for your catfish. So you should always think of refreshing the water or you do a shed on top of the concrete tank on top of all your ponds so that your fish will be conducive. And if you're having them inside tarpaulin or tank or anything rubber, make sure you have them under a shed too so that your catfish will be a little bit comfortable when it's sunny. When you are doing all these things, number one, your catfish are going to live healthily. They are going to live comfortable and live very good, very, very good inside your pond. And number two, your catfish are going to grow very fast, very well. They are going to do very, very well. They will grow fat and grow bigger and longer. And number three, your catfish will have the sight to pick whatever feed you give them. Like they will be able to eat and take feed very, very well. For that reason, if your pond are clean and are good and in a good condition, then your catfish will eat well. When they eat well, they will live healthy. And when they live healthy, they will grow very, very well. So that is the end of this number 6. Number 7. Number 7 is something most of us do ask for before going into this business. Even most business, we do like to know in and out of everything before we go into it. So number 7 is all about the challenges in catfish farming. There are a lot of challenges in catfish farming. Number 1 is high cost of feed. High cost of feed, every day it keep on increasing, every time it keep on increasing. So high cost of feed has been one of the challenges we are having in Nigeria. For instance, today you go, you buy a feed maybe 8,400 or 8,500. Tomorrow you go there, they will tell you it's 9,000. Number 2, the government are not ready to help the catfish farming. Like they're not ready to take it to a higher level. So they just leave the catfish farmer to do their own thing. If it is something that they care about, like make it a wide business in Nigeria, then the catfish business would have rise to a higher level. Then number 3, there are a kind of experience you will experience in the farm that you will be like, no, I'm not going into this business again. Situation like erosion. So it's one of the challenges most of the catfish farmer face, and it's because there is no good drainage for the water to pass. That is why most of these farmer experience that challenge. So it's everywhere. So drainage, for those who have earthen pond, they understand what I'm talking about. So there is a problem, challenges of erosion. Number 4, most of the breeders we have are not reliable. Some of them are not trustable. So they will give you last grade of fish, and by the time you stop them, you end up having poor growth. The fish won't grow well, so you will have poor growth. From there, if you sell the fish, you are not going to make more profit. Rather, you end up losing your capital. So from there, you will develop loss of interest for this catfish farming. It's one of the challenges most people still face in this catfish farming. Number five, which is another challenge, is most people face, most farmers rather face in this catfish farming, is thickness of water. Thickness of water in what sense? Most time, some of the this thing we have, some of the water source we have are not reliable. They are not good. For instance, it may be a kind of chemicalized water, maybe a water that they are doing. They have all this kind of industry. There's a farm I went to in one side of Lagos. So the water they have close to them, is not even usable. You can't even use it because there is a brewery, or what is it called, a company of beer that do run their waste into that water. So such kind of water, you can use it. So from there, if your fish are getting matured and the water is getting thick, you won't have any opportunity to clean it, recycle it, because the water you have close to you is not usable. And if you want to get rid of all these things, what you can do is just to have a kind of reservoir that you pump out the water in the pond and you pump the one from the reservoir into the pond. So that is just the only solution. So that is one of the challenges most of the catfish farmer are facing. The water source is not good. Most of the water source they use are a kind of chemicalized water source, which is not good for the health of their catfish. Number six, which still happen to be one of the challenges most people are facing, especially the new babies in this catfish business. You go, you watch other people's channel, you go there, you go, they will advise you, so farmer will advise you and tell you stock so number of catfish inside so number of pond, which is not good. So most people overstock their pond. They overstock the capacity that their pond can take. They put much fish that are heavier than that, and at the end of the day, if they have poor result, maybe when the fish cannibalize each other or most of them die due to small space they have inside the water, they will lose interest in this catfish business. So it's one of the challenges. Nobody is ready to tell people the right number of catfish to stock. People usually overstock their pond, which is not good enough. Number seven, which is the last part of this part two, the last part of this part two before I end this online course, for this second part, is insecurity in all over the farms we have in Nigeria. So when you do not get a pond in a secured area, at the end of the day, when your fish are ready for harvest, you will have another people that do not work for you to come and harvest your fish. That is when you don't get the pond at a secured area. So it's one of the challenges we are facing too. Thief do come to pack fish. That wrap up the part two for this online course. Please, if you are liking this thing, subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to smash the like button on this video, and don't forget to share to many people that need this lecture too. Thank you for watching. My name is Simeon O. James. If you want to reach out to me, kindly call the number you are seeing here. You can text me on WhatsApp too. Then we discuss whatever thing that is bothering you. Thank you so much for watching this video.